Hello and welcome to another episode of Meenal's World. Here we are on episode 30, and I look back to episode 1 and I just remember how difficult it was to start out. Even though it was the second time around starting a podcast, it almost felt like I was learning to walk again. And this week I want to talk more about why I decided to start this new journey and why I left Desi Outsiders. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and I thank you all for tuning in to my other episodes with the amazing and incredible guests that I have. Hopefully we'll have more of that in the next few weeks. I just wanted to use this episode to just get to know everybody and also for people to understand a little bit about who I am and how I came about on this journey, because I think with that context, I think it's much more enjoyable to listen to these episodes and understand who I am as a person and what I'm really trying to achieve here. So without further ado, we'll jump right into the show. So first of all, the question is, why am I sharing this and why do I want to talk about my new journey and why I've started this new venture of Meenal's World? And it's not easy to explain, and I'll try my best to do all the explaining and I guess it's important to understand that my previous podcast, Desi Outsiders, was co-hosted by another friend of mine. So we were two people on that podcast. So this is my side of the story, and we always have to remember that there are two sides of the story, and whoever is listening now and who has listened to Desi Outsiders in the past will know that we had a great run. We did. I can't remember exactly how many episodes. We definitely didn't reach the 100 mark, but we passed the 50 mark, and we did really, really well. And I really wish the other person very, very well in the future. I mean, we had a good run, and life happens. So here I am. Here I'm sort of giving my side of the story, because a lot of people who listen in and who message me and send me DMs on Instagram and email me saying, Meenal, this is a project I want to start. This is something I want to do. What is your advice, and what can I do to make this work? And I think the idea of success and the idea of creating new projects or starting a passion project isn't as simple as going from A to B. There's so much crap you have to go through in between. And this is why I want to share the story, because this is as real as it gets. So I'll take you back all the way to my fourth year in medical school. This was 2016, the summer of 2016. So just over 4 years ago. And I remember that time of medical school, I personally think I had hit rock bottom for the first time in my life. I mean, I had times where I was, not in a great mood, or I wasn't feeling great. I wasn't my perky self. But this was a time in my life where I really hit rock bottom. And you have to remember, I moved to Czech Republic, to one of the coldest places I've ever lived in. And I left Gibraltar. I left the beach. I left the sunny weather. I left home. I left my family. And I thought I'd be able to do it. And now that I reflect on it, and it's something I haven't really thought about much, because obviously life has happened so fast since then. Everything has just sort of happened, and I haven't had a moment to take it in. But doing this episode is quite therapeutic for me, and it allows me to gain some clarity as well. But that time of my life was a time where I just wanted things to happen. 6 years in medical school is a long time, and I kind of felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. Everybody around me seemed really happy. Everybody was enjoying the student life. Not that I wasn't. I think I had my times where I was enjoying myself, but I found it difficult to find the joy in things. And people seem to be finding this joy so easily, and I always wondered why I struggled so much. At the same time, my relationship with my parents and my family was a one which was very rocky, and it was tough. And you have to remember that at that time, I didn't have 3G like we have now. Communication was easy, but not as easy as it is now. So back then, if I had like a fight with anyone in my family, if I had a disagreement or an argument, it wasn't as easy as solving it as it is now. And it wasn't as easy as getting everybody on a call. So apart from dealing with my family, I was also dealing with the fact that I still had another 3 years left in medical school. I had another 3 years left in this cold, cold, lonely place. I had to get through it somehow, and I just didn't know how. And this is where my journey for my happiness sort of started, because before that, I think I was very content. And Nishant always describes me as someone who was very happy-go-lucky. I remember when I first arrived in Prague, um, everyone wondered why I was always so happy, and how I managed to study every day and not complain about it, and how I managed to go to the gym and go running, whereas everybody sort of struggled, but I managed to get through it as if, I knew the place, or as if I'd done something like this before, when in fact I hadn't. It was the first time I left home in this way and in this manner. So the usual things I was doing, like I was doing my sports, I was meeting up with my friends, I was doing some of my cooking and my baking, and I was learning the Czech language, I was trying to interact with people, I did everything. But nothing was giving me that satisfaction, and nothing seemed to be working either. And at that time, I was in a long distance relationship with Nishant, and this was about this 2 years into our long distance relationship, which meant I had another 2 years left. So when Nishant left Prague, when he left Czech Republic, I knew we had to be in a long distance relationship for 4 years. And and now that I look back, I don't know how I did it. I think there was just a part of me that just accepted that it's something I had to do, and I had to get through, and so did he, and we just had to use that time as best as we could, and as productively as we could, I guess, to better ourselves, so that when we did come together, we were, I guess you could say, like a powerhouse, where we had our skills and we had our energy, we could just sort of put that together. But I mean, it's easier said than done. Nishant was living a very different life. He was working, he was earning money. He entered adulthood in that phase, and I was still a student. I didn't really appreciate the life that Nishant was leading, and I think that he had been through what I was going through already. So we were on completely separate pages. Anyway, I think it's just important to get that context. So this is the position that I was in. This is the bubble I was in. As I said, nothing was working. And I always wondered, like, am I the only person going through this? I mean, there's so many hundreds and thousands of people in medical school. There are so many hundreds and thousands of brown Indian girls probably going through the same thing. I can't be alone. And that was a thing, that there was something bothering me, but I couldn't point my finger to it. But that also meant that there was a lot going on, and I had to sort of divide everything. Okay, so the first thing is I'm away from home, I'm not happy. The second thing was my relationship with my parents wasn't great, I'm not happy. I'm away from Nishant, another thing that's making me unhappy. And once that started to come together, I realized that my outlet was to share my story and to share other people's stories. And one of the things that helped me a lot at that time was podcasts, and podcasts weren't as common as they are now. So there were only a few shared real life stories and shared topics that helped me go through these tough times. And I still remember listening to some episodes almost on a daily basis, continuously, the same one again and again on repeat, because it almost felt like that was my only saving grace. I look back now at my innocence at that time, because I felt so lost, and I felt like a lost puppy. And I just wish I could just take myself out of my body now and go back to that person and say, hey, it's okay. Like, you will fall flat on your face. It's okay to be naive. It's okay to be innocent. It's okay to try and figure out the ways of the world, because you won't figure it out in one day. I mean, we're talking about 4 years down the line now. I still haven't figured it out. Of course, I'm in a better position, but I kind of wanted an immediate result at that time. I wanted things to change overnight. And I think not having that patience and not having that perception, not having that perspective, made things much, much more difficult. So this is the position I was in. This is where my mental state was. This is where I was in my life. I was at home that summer in 2016. I was in Gibraltar, and at that time I was working on a website called Feminism India. I don't really know if it's still online, to be honest. I think it might still be, actually. You can check. Feminismindia.com was a website. And I thought, you know what, let's create a platform for girls like me, boys like me, who want to express their views on, for example, feminism and being a young adult in our generation and trying to figure out our ways. Because I've mentioned this many times that when I was in medical school, when I was trying to figure out who I was, trying to figure out my identity, I always felt stuck between being British and being Desi. I didn't really know who I was and where I was really in my life, because it almost felt like I was too brown for the white people, and for the brown people, I was also too brown. So I didn't really know where I fit in. There were times where I felt embarrassed about the kind of music I liked, but there were also times where I felt quite proud. And I was just going through this yo-yo of emotions about who I was and how I felt. So I thought, well, why don't we just get all our stories together, all the different topics that we're seeing, and at that time as well, in 2016, the talk of rape cases in India was a big conversation because they were trying to take Nirbhaya's abuser to court at that time. So it was a big story, and we had we had a few people on board, and they were understanding of the kind of project I had started. They kind of knew what I was trying to achieve. And remember, at that time, I don't think Instagram was as popular, and the pages that you see now, like all the pages about humanity, all the pages about empowerment, you didn't see that as you see now. I mean, every other page on Instagram is a motivational page. Every other page on Instagram is either a podcast or one of empowerment or one of education. Not that it's a wrong thing, not that it's anything, not that I have anything against it, but you do see them left, right, and center now. So it's almost become kind of saturated that it's very easy to get lost between all these posts and not really absorb the information that you need to. Anyway, I'm digressing. So we have Feminism India, we have this website. I got this guy in India with a little amount of savings I had to build this up. I remember waking up at like 4 a.m. every morning because the time difference, and he only had a bit of a window before he would go to his office. So I'd try wake up on time just to meet with him and try get a few things sorted out. And trust me, I thought I was working hard. I thought that, you know what, I'm invincible. I'm waking up before the world is woken up. I'm working on this website, and this is going to make me a success. I'm going to be successful just because I wake up early. And I'm not kidding. I know it sounds completely stupid, but that's what I was thinking. I thought, well, I'm waking up at 4 a.m. Surely this is the ticket to success. Now that I realize, and now I go back, just the mere fact of waking up doesn't make you a hard worker. You actually have to put in the hard work. I mean, that's the whole point. That's the whole point of waking up early. You wake up early and you put in the effort and you're efficient and you're focused. So we're trying to build this website, and I mean, it took months. It took months over back and forward, trying to get the design right, trying to get the content up. And that is something I look back at now, and that's something I should have basically done in 24 hours. But I didn't understand the concept of hard work. I didn't really understand the concept of conception to completion. It was just an idea I had in my head, and I sort of just carried it on as a hobby, and I guess to some extent a pastime as well, because it was the summer holidays. I didn't really have much else to do. So as we were trying to build this website, I had all these young people, girls and boys, working with us to build this content. And it was tough because these lovely people gave me their time, and these lovely people gave me their energy. They were mainly based in India. So again, time difference was something I had to look at. And also they were in college. They had their own personal lives. I wasn't paying them anything. It was just a sort of group project we worked on and remotely. And I only had met these people online and maybe had a couple of conversations with them over the phone. I mean, there wasn't much to it. So it was difficult to get this going, but somehow we managed to get a post out every week, and I edited a few articles. And I thought, okay, I've got this website going. Why don't we start a podcast? Because why not? And I wanted to work. I wanted to just keep doing lots of projects to distract myself, and at the same time, I was building an orphanage in Kenya. And the truth is, I was going through a lot of crap at home. I was going through a lot of crap to the extent that I could barely sleep at night. I was trying to find excuses to, sorry, I just yawned. And you know what? I'm not going to edit this out because I am tired and I think I'm going to accept that I will yawn in this podcast, but um, I would leave home and I would try to stay out of the house as much as possible because I just didn't want to have any difficult conversation with any of my family members. And when I started this podcast, that's when I decided that Ankita would be the best person to start it with because she's someone who wrote really well. She's someone who was very passionate about feminist topics and feminist issues. She'd studied English literature, so she was very, or is for that matter, very well read. So who better to start a podcast with? Now, don't get me wrong, starting the podcast was tough. It was very, very difficult. I remember spending hours on end, even just trying to get the first episode right. And it took a lot of patience from both our sides. Releasing a podcast back then was a huge, huge deal. Now it's a bit easier. I mean, it's easier to find equipment. I mean, I think a few days ago, I had like 3 people on the same day come up to me saying, how do I start a podcast? I was like, you can start a podcast in literally 10 minutes because it is that easy. It is that simple. You don't need to faff around so much with equipment and connection. And remember, again, this is something we did remotely. So we had to work with time differences, connection, and it was my hobby alongside medical school. And it was tough only when I had exams. When I had exams, they would come in sort of concentrated periods of time. So I had to juggle things around a bit. But apart from that, I think it was quite a breeze really to do a podcast in medical school. I mean, what better time really to entertain a hobby like that? There was one issue though, because when I started this podcast, and I remember the first episode we released, Ankita was in her kitchen, and the first episode got over 500 hits, almost 1,000, I think. And we released it on SoundCloud at that time. And she opened a glass of wine with her husband because we were all of us were very happy with the outcome of it. And Ankita's husband did a lot of donkey work, really. Poor guy. He worked so hard to make sure that the podcasts were edited nicely, and he made sure that we sounded like we were really well spoken and we made no mistakes, which I'm being open about now. I mean, we did make quite a few mistakes. There were lots of umming and ahhing because we were learning how to speak. We were learning how to speak in front of a microphone. So Shane did a lot of hard work, and the first episode came out, and Ankita said to me, where do you see yourself in the next few years? Because now this is something we're going to gain momentum with, and what do you want to do? And I just told her, I was like, well, a talk show would be nice, or a radio show would be nice, or I didn't really know what I wanted. I just knew that I wanted to show up every week and release a podcast because that was just something that was constant for me, because everything else was so flammable at the time with my family and my future. I didn't really know what was going on, but that was that one constant thing that I knew would happen every single week. So some part of me wanted to evolve this podcast like a business. I wanted to monetize it. I wanted it to be like my fallback. If I needed some extra cash, I could get it from that. If for whatever reason I decided that I didn't want to go into medicine, then I had that as well to fall back on. But the funny thing is that although I wanted it to be treated like a business, although I wanted it to evolve like a business, deep down, I didn't treat it like a business at all. There was no part of me treating this as a project with goals or treating it as a project with some sort of goal posts more than anything, because the end goal is always going to change, and I've accepted that. But having these goalposts, okay, so like in 6 months' time, this is the kind of podcast I want people to see me as, and in 1 year's time, this is what I want. And it's so important to have that when you have any project, man. Like, if not, it just becomes a rut, and it might not feel that way at the beginning. At the beginning, you're going to think, I'm showing up every week, I'm writing my blog posts, I'm releasing my episodes, and that's good enough. And that energy is gonna run out. That energy is going to run out. You're going to get to a point where you say, actually, releasing a podcast every week is not enough. And once you get to the point, that's when things become difficult, because you have to recalibrate, you have to reorganize and restructure yourself. So the best thing is to always have this sort of plan or this sort of idea at least 6 months in advance, so you have some vision. Because if not, you're just going to be drifting through. And that's what I did. I was just drifting through and I thought, you know what, I'm just going to release a podcast every week. I didn't even think about what would happen when I started working. I just assumed that everything was going to be okay, and you know what, things will work out. So yes, I wanted it to become popular, but I didn't appreciate the amount of personal growth and personal development that I had to do to create something great. Because if you look at it now, 4 years down, if I was the same person I was or I am 4 years ago, there won't be much of a change in my podcast. There won't be much of a change in the person I am. So this is one thing I didn't appreciate at all. And now it's obviously a whole different story. I mean, after every episode, I go back, I make notes, I try to see where I can improve because, well, it's it's important that as I grow and develop, then I can reflect this in my episodes. And I remember when we did Desi Outsiders, I'd shy away from so many topics. Like politics was one thing I always shied away from because I was too scared to explore the topic. I was too shy to work hard and too afraid to look like a fool. Um, but now I make sure that I actually get myself out of my own depth and get out of my comfort zone because actually, if I get these guests, if I talk about politics, if I talk about worldly issues and issues that I'm not aware of, not only am I educating myself, but I'm using this platform to educate other people as well. So, anyway, back to the podcast. We had a great run. We had incredible guests, and the feedback I look back at to this day is something I'm really, really proud of, you know. And Ankita worked very, very hard throughout a couple of years that we were recording, and so did Shane, and they were great people to work with. But then the issue came that when I started working as a doctor, when I started working in the hospital, I came to realize that, well, actually, I have night shifts. I have 12-hour days, 13-hour days. At the same time, in my first year of working, I was also tutoring as well. So I had a lot going on. And even just squeezing an hour to record was difficult. And I remember sitting in the canteen and trying to like prepare notes for the episode. And it was a lot to juggle. And I felt quite burnt out. And I think at the time, Ankita as well was starting a new job. So we were both in a really different position in our life because I was also about to get married and I was planning the future that I was going to have with Nishant and even having a family. And Ankita was trying to do the same with Shane. We were just trying to sort of, I guess, move on with our lives because we had enough of being two girls, just, you know, having our hobbies. And it was a great run, but what's next? What's more? So it was about 2 years ago. No, not 2 years ago. I would say 2018. Yeah, 2018, January 2018 it was. Um, Ankita said to me, look, I need to take a break. And I thought, well, you know what? That's fair. That's okay. And it broke my heart because the podcast was something I sacrificed a lot for. The podcast was something I held very close to my heart, and it's something I was really passionate about. And I wanted to create something out of it. I just didn't know what it was. And through those few months between January and summertime, which was just before I was about to get married, Ankita and I, we were so busy with our own lives, we didn't even get a chance to communicate with each other or connect and see how we could move ahead harmoniously. And I think that's an important word, harmoniously, because she was living a very different life to what I was. And you have to remember that we had a run which was quite nice and quite pleasant for most of it. I mean, think about it. I was in Czech Republic. She was in Scotland. We had a time difference. I was in medical school. I had lots of exams. She was working around her job as well. And we still released very good quality content every week. So I'm really proud of that. And it's something I'll never forget. And it's something that I will always hold to high regard. And Shane showed up every week to edit the podcast. And I still remember the night before we were supposed to release the episode. And I think at that time we would release on Thursday. So he would be up on Wednesday night to edit, which is something that, I mean, I probably wouldn't have even done, but he was very dedicated to the cause. So in those months, I took time to reflect. And now I thought, you know what? I have a chance again to start something that I'm passionate about, something that I can hold to my name. And I thought, you know what, it's really easy to pick up a microphone and just record, but I didn't do that. I spent months planning things out, trying to figure out the kind of content I want to create and the kind of trajectory I wanted. And I think doing that made me have more of a desire to show up every week. And this is the point I'm trying to make. And that is that if you're trying to start a project, whether it's a passion project or a school project or a university project, try set out a plan. Try tell yourself, okay, and write it down, because there are times where you're not going to have that motivation. There are times you're not going to have that drive. So write it down and say, actually, this is what I want to achieve and this is what I want to do. And it may mean you have four or five different passion projects running alongside each other. And that is fine. Don't let anybody tell you that it's too much. Don't let anybody tell you that you're juggling too much. Actually, sometimes it's important to juggle this, because what you learn from some projects you can put into practice in other projects, and they all end up working in tandem, really. So don't listen to people who tell you that you're handling too much. Of course, there is a breaking point, a tipping point where you will be handling too much, but don't be afraid of picking up another passion project. Don't be afraid of picking up another book to read. Don't be afraid, because the world is so big and your lifetime is not enough to complete everything you want. So just use the time you have. So when I was setting out to do Meenal's World, I was very aware of my family life. I was very aware of my working life. And now just remember as well that this year we've had the judicial review as well. So that's coming too. Taking the government to court is not something that I had in plan, but hey, it's part of the works now, and I have to work around it. But one thing I did differently was that I set out a plan. I set out a vision, and I said, these are the things I want to achieve. By hook or by crook, I'm going to make sure that it works out. And yes, there are times where it does get too much and I'm just like, well, I'm falling behind a bit on this side of my passion project. I need to pick it up. And to be successful, I'm not saying I'm successful because I'm far from that, but to be successful and to be that person you wanted to be when you were young, to be that person who's following their dreams, to be that person who's actually willing to take risks, you have to have a plan. Even when you're risking, you still need to have a plan. And this is something that I did not appreciate at all. So I left Desi Outsiders because I believed in something different. I believed that I could be of more help to the world by myself. That didn't turn out, that didn't come out right. I believe that I could use my skills better on my own and working in my own space, because I had to appreciate that people have their own lives, people have their own things going on. I can't keep asking for people things that either they can't because they're too busy, or because, well, it might just not line with your own values and your own ethos. So if you're a young person listening and you start a project with a friend, I'm not here to put you off, but I'm just trying to explain that you will grow up, and you will grow up in different bubbles, and you'll grow up at different speeds, and you will accelerate at different points in your life, and you have to appreciate that. And if you know that, and if you accept that, you'll be okay. So here I am now with Meenal's World, and in between all of this, remember, I tried radio, I tried so many other things in between, but nothing worked. And this is the only thing that I love doing. If you have a plan and if you have a goal, it's okay to start it off with somebody, and it's okay to have lots of different projects on the side, because you will have to juggle everything at one point anyway. So what you're learning from one project will always come in handy for the other project as well. So never let anybody tell you that you're doing too much, because in fact, the reason why I'm able to do these podcasts and edit them and manage a young baby and also, go to work is because I learned so much through all the different things I explored in medical school. So this is the reason why leaving Desi Outsiders was really important to me, because I felt like I had a different vision. I felt I had a different ethos, and it just didn't work out. And, I've always wished Ankita really well. And it could be that she starts her own podcast at some point as well. And if she does, I'll definitely be the first one to subscribe, because she's a great host and she's a great storyteller. But it just didn't work out, and I accepted that, and it wasn't a nice pill to swallow, because part of me just wanted to have that fairy tale dream, whereas as friends we just build an empire. But it didn't work, and that's okay, and you just have to pivot. And so, after 4 years of pivoting, here I am releasing Meenal's World. And I hope you've enjoyed this episode to give you a bit of an idea of who I am and why I'm doing this and the kind of vision I have over the next few months and years. And I just appreciate all of your energy and time that you give me every week. If you want to get in touch, remember you can find me on Instagram at Meenal's World. You can find me on Twitter and most social media platforms as well. You can drop me an email to meenalsworldpodcast@gmail.com if you have any suggestions or any ideas of who I could interview or any topics we can talk about. So thank you for tuning in again. Have a lovely weekend, and I'll see you all next week.